I welcome you all to the celebration of International Day of Girl Child. It is a day declared by United Nations to recognize girls' rights and the unique challenges girls face around the world and bridge the gender equality gaps. On this occasion, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Isha Ray with us. Dr. Isha Ray is a professor at Energy and Resources Group and Associate Dean for Equity and Inclusion at UC Berkeley. She has a BA in philosophy, politics, and economics from Oxford University and a PhD in applied economics from Food Research Institute at Stanford University. Dr. Ray's research interests are water and development, sanitation and development, gender equality, and technology and society. She is a highly accomplished leader in the domain, and we are delighted to hear her thoughts on varied aspects related to girl children. My name is Srujana Kaddevarmuth, and I am a data science and artificial intelligence evangelist and an advocate of using data science for social good. I work as a senior director of artificial intelligence and value acceleration at multinational corporate here in the Bay Area. I enjoy fostering communities of data science professionals, and I'm serving on the board of United Nations Association San Francisco chapter in attaining United Nations Sustainable Development Goals through responsible usage of artificial intelligence technologies. Women make up 2/3 of the world population. According to the global statistics, just 39% of the rural girls attend secondary school. This is far fewer than boys. According to UNESCO, 132 million girls are out of school globally. This situation is even bleaker when we talk about technology education of girls. Given the context, we would love to hear your journey from a girl in STEM to an advocate of using technology to improve livelihoods. Dr. Ray, can you share a glimpse of your personal and professional journey in the space?
So thank you for that question, Srujana. The first thing I do want to acknowledge is that even though obviously I was a girl child in school, I had a far more privileged background that has enabled the trajectory that I've been able to take relative to the girls that you spoke about so movingly a few minutes ago, who have not been able to complete secondary school and have not had any access to digital technology. So I do think we need to acknowledge that even in the so-called developing world, in the emerging economies, there are huge gender distinctions and class distinctions within these societies. And in general, I would say that coming from an urban setting where I was able to attend good schools and further my education with a lot of parental encouragement, that has already enabled me to get a start in life that most of our sisters in less developed economies are in fact deprived of. So I do want to say that whatever my trajectory has been, it has not been by me alone. I do want to acknowledge that. So I am from Kolkata in India. I went to school there. I graduated and got a scholarship to Oxford University, where I studied philosophy and politics. I look back and I feel like I had a lot of family support, leaving by myself with no family members to a very distant place. My family trusted me. There are many actually friends and relatives of my parents who cautioned against sending me off like that, because I was sort of a single, unattached young girl, but my parents didn't pay them too much attention. And I left for Somerville College, where I took my degree, as you said, in philosophy, politics, and economics. And towards the last part of my undergraduate career, I realized I wanted to continue in research and got a fellowship to come to Stanford University. Through the course of my PhD work is when I really got enmeshed in the challenges of rural water, urban water, and the kind of lives that women had to lead when they had to kind of live their entire day around access to water and sanitation. Because they weren't receiving water piped to the house. They had to either fetch it, or they had to wait for it, or they had to somehow ration it in their homes, prioritizing their needs and not being able to use water in whatever way was actually necessary for the overall public health of their communities, compromising on the health of their communities, using their own time and effort to sort of make up for the fact the water was of very indifferent quality and often inadequate for their needs. So, what I'm trying to say is doing my PhD work brought me in contact with all of these families that I didn't actually grow up with or know when I was, a very privileged middle-class girl going to school and college. And it really reinforced for me the lived experience of not having access to water and sanitation, not having access to the kind of education and job mobility that education brings you, and the way in which just fundamentally the lack of these basic needs like shaped the entire days and nights of all these women and girls I came across. And though that was not exactly the topic of my PhD, once I had lived that life in the course of my own fieldwork, I don't think I was able to look back. So I think that those early research experiences I had that were not actually particularly gender focused, but brought me face to face with the days and nights of women and girls who lacked basic needs, more or less changed the trajectory of my subsequent research and work in a way that I certainly did not intend when I first started out on this path.
Thanks, Dr. Ray, for an amazing glimpse of your background. Girls' education should be a strategic development priority for all the countries globally. Better educated women tend to be more informed about the nutrition and healthcare, have fewer children, marry at a later age, and their children are usually healthier should they choose to become mothers. They are more likely to participate in the formal labor market and earn higher incomes. All of these factors combined can help lift the households, communities, and countries out of poverty. STEM education of girls has been a challenge even in the technologically advanced countries of the world. So, Dr. Ray, according to you, what's the importance of encouraging girls to pursue STEM education, and what are the associated challenges that you foresee?
That's a really deep question, and I don't know whether I'll be able to answer it as fully as I would like in the short time that we have. So I'm just going to try to make 3 points. The first thing is, for any education, STEM or not, it is really essential for girls to finish secondary school. This is the gap that you pointed to when we started out our conversation. Many more girls are finishing primary school, but they're dropping out of secondary school in much larger numbers than we would like. And we would like to focus on the importance of finishing secondary school, because all of the advantages that you brought up, Srujana, better education, better ability to participate in the formal labor market, better ability to take care of child health, better ability to speak up for their own rights, better ability to know what those rights even are that they can speak up for. All of that is really a product of being able to finish secondary education. If the girl's education stops in grade 5 or 6, she is not usually able to get to the point where she and her family can glean the advantages that you spoke of. So we really need to focus on keeping girls in secondary school and try to understand all of the barriers that prevent them from finishing secondary school. So the next question now, I will go on to your question about STEM. In the current day economy, in the modern world, I would say that STEM education is really a kind of pathway to many of the new jobs and job opportunities that are becoming available both for boys and girls, for men and women. So any kind of technological field, any kind of civil engineering field, even when you think about issues of water and sanitation, these are very engineering dominated fields, public health fields, population health, these are all effectively STEM education requiring fields. And these are, we should remember, the growth sectors fueling many economies, which is why I think the importance of STEM education is so clear for girls to have an equal playing field, because these are actually the growth areas. You know, the days when women were taught to weave, to make art and weave baskets and so on without any kind of market analysis being done at the end of it, I think are thankfully not dominating what we think of as women's education anymore. They will always remain a part of women's education and focus, but it's really important to focus on the formal sector opportunities that STEM education can bring. The third thing that I would like to say is it's important for us to understand what the barriers are to STEM education, just as we want to understand what the barriers are to any kind of secondary education. We want to understand the barriers to STEM education. And the barriers to STEM education fall into three categories. The first are social norms and taboos, where women are often not seen to be strong in math, or they're actually sometimes dissuaded, discouraged from being in math science oriented fields, thus really making it very difficult for them to catch up later on. The second is women are often considered in many, particularly in many low income economies, they're often considered to be primarily mothers, wives, and sisters, and only secondarily professionals. So even though they may be granted the opportunity to study STEM fields, certain kinds of necessities of STEM fields, for example, as you advance in your career, going for, say, training sessions or workshops or lab opportunities, sometimes these are not considered proper for girls to pursue, or early marriage or early motherhood can really come in the way of them pursuing the kind of career options that a STEM education actually demands if you ultimately want gender parity. And the third thing that I would bring up is, while STEM education is given a lot of importance because of its growth potential and because of the way that the world economy has shaken out, I am not one of those people who believes that a STEM education should be seen as completely separate from a broader education, which encompasses the humanities and the social sciences. Science and technology are supposed to serve society. Society is not supposed to serve science and technology. So I think that STEM education is the best kind of STEM education if it is in the context of a broader humanities-oriented, social-oriented education as well, so that we know who is the slave and who is the master. And we don't make the mistake of thinking it's the other way around. That, I think, will not stand girls or boys or any gender in good stead. STEM is a tool for social betterment. And we need to bear that in mind even when we think about STEM education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for making a very important and yet a very discrete point on distinguishing the importance of science and technology serving humanity rather than humanity being just one of the enablers in terms of developing science and technology there, right? So this is a very important distinction. I think that touches a very core concept of ensuring that we are responsibly and ethically using science and technology to create a better lives that we deserve and we aspire for our next generation. According to the International Telecommunication Union, one of the United Nations specialized agency, the power and transformational potential of internet access and use is not equally distributed. Of that, the estimates that they produce, around 3.7 billion people are unconnected, and majority of them are women and girls. The digital gender gap continues to expand in many developing countries, creating a specific need to support digital gender equality. Now, globally, women and girls use the internet 12.5% less than that of men and boys. And it is believed that the digital technologies are an essential pathway for gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls, but it has not been achieved in multiple countries. So, according to you, Dr. Ray, what is your viewpoint, or what are your perspectives on the impact that the gender digital divide will have on building sustainable economies, and how do we bridge those gaps in the upcoming decades or years?
I must be really honest and say, I am not sure that the gender divide or the gender digital divide or the digital economy is necessarily going to ensure a sustainable future. A sustainable future needs planning for sustainability, whether you are approaching knowledge through digital means or other means. I think sustainability is a goal, a critical goal for our future, but I do not think it will necessarily be guaranteed by greater access to digital technology. So because it needs its own planning and its own values. That being said, it is very critical for gender equality to have digital gender equality, because as you have pointed out, more and more sources of information are now coming to us through the internet and through digital means. Fewer and fewer countries are unconnected. And so if a country is connected and receiving a lot of information and communication through digital means, and girls and women are falling behind, then it's going to deepen not just across country inequalities, but within country inequalities. And that is very much a goal profoundly to be avoided. So I think on the strength of equality of opportunity, equality of being part of the global system, equality of having access to social networks that are beyond your immediate kin and neighborhoods, all of these things are really key services that the digital economy can provide to everybody, and in particular girls and women who often tend to lead more sheltered lives. And so one of their major outlets to access the outside world of their homes and neighborhoods would in fact be through digital means. One thing I would like to point out is that in less developed economies or in low income settings, a lot of the major medium through which the internet is accessed is the medium of the mobile phone. So when we think about the inaccessibility of the digital world to girls and women, we also have to think about what is the medium through which they're going to access the digital world. It's very common in developing countries or in low-income households for women and girls not to be in control of the mobile phone. Often, if it's an adolescent girl, she may not be trusted. Like, we don't know whom she's going to call. We don't know whom she's texting. So it's a form of control socially, not to allow equal access to brothers and sisters. But of course, that also means that the girl is not getting access to an outside world of information, of knowledge. But for example, I have talked to many rural women who feel like the colleges and schools are not really providing good enough education for them, and they want to be able to access some of the other resources that they know are out there for the global digital communities to learn more and learn better than their schools are able to teach them. So it is important for us to realize that access to the internet needs hardware. And increasingly, that hardware is the mobile phone in most developing countries, particularly in rural settings. And if we're not going to be able to overcome our distrust, societal distrust of what girls and women are likely to do with a mobile phone in their hands, we're not really going to be able to break down that digital divide. And this is why I think STEM education, digital divide, whatever we want to talk about with respect to gender equality, is deeply tied up with also simultaneously addressing social expectations and social norms. We have to go hand in hand, because social expectations and social norms determine access to digital technology as much as the technology really does itself. So we shouldn't be again, thinking about access to technology without that social context in which that access can take place.
So one of the very interesting and deep aspect that you brought, Dr. Ray, is talking about eliminating the systemic barriers of not being able to trust women and girls with the technology, right? That requires much more mobilization and awareness generation than these topics of educating women and girls specifically in the STEM areas, right? Now let's have a brief conversation around your fondest hope for women and girls of the next generation, right? I believe every girl in this world should have this right to live free from violence and discrimination, to enjoy highest attainable standard of both physical as well as mental health, to be educated, to own their property, to have the real estate, to vote, and to earn an equal wage. Giving women and girls access to internet and skills to use digital technologies can provide them these opportunities to start, say, new businesses, sell products in the new markets, find better paid jobs, and access to education, have access to better healthcare providers, and access to financial services, as well as to enhance their participation overall in public life, and help with the information exchange as well, right? So Dr. Ray, can you talk a little bit about what is your fondest hope for the girls of the next generation?
Thank you for that question. Let me see how I want to crystallize that. I think I'll take over a little bit and segue out of my response to the last question, which was I kind of talked about the importance of social norms and social expectations in actually enabling girls to achieve their full potential along all of the dimensions that you talked about. So let me lean on two writers who have been of great influence to me in answering your question of what is my fondest hope. So the first is the French feminist Simone de Beauvoir, who writes so succinctly. She says, "A woman is not born, she is made." And what she means is when a girl is born, her life is open for everything. But social constraints and social norms work on actually all people. I don't want to say by any means that boys are completely separated from social expectations and norms, because that would not be correct. But girls are even more expected, bound and chained by the norms of society, and making it difficult for them to achieve all of these things that you have spoken about. And that is why I feel it is so important for us to recognize that you are born a girl, maybe, but you are made into a woman through the actions of societal constraints and expectations. And that is why I think that it is so important to simultaneously address those societal norms if you truly want girls to have full opportunity and freedom to live lives of meaning. And now I want to come to my second inspiration, Amartya Sen, who argued that the point of development was freedom. The point of development is not necessarily more money, although that can be part of it, or better health, although that is certainly something we wish for, or greater education, also that is certainly something we wish for. But what are all these qualifications aiming towards? And Sen says, Professor Sen says, what we really want for all people, whatever their gender, is that they should be able to define their lives. They should have the freedom to define their lives in such a way that is meaningful for them. So if they choose to be mothers, if that is what brings them meaning, they should have that opportunity. If they choose not to be mothers, because that is not the way they want to exploit meaning in their lives, explore meaning in their lives, then that too is a fundamental right of theirs, to have the dignity and freedom to define the boundaries of a good life. And so I think my fondest hope for girls, for everybody, but we're talking primarily about girls who are often more constrained in life than boys are. My fondest hope for girls is that the women that they grow into should not be women that have been defined by everybody else other than them. They should be the primary architects of the women they become or the persons they become. And my second fondest hope is for not just girls, but for development overall, is that we in the development community strive to think about development not only in material terms, not only in quantifiable achievement terms, but in the terms that Sen laid out for us, which is lives of meaning, lives of dignity, lives of freedom. That really, I think if a girl or woman or any person has the opportunity in their life to shape their lives according to their values and their sense of dignity, that is the best hope for development. That is all we can really ask.
It's a lot to ponder over and actually get that ingrained. I believe it's not just the fondest hope for the society, but also you sent out a very clear message for girls who consider you as a role model in multiple aspects based on amazing credits and accomplishments that you have. So I would like to thank you wholeheartedly, Dr. Ray, for spending your valuable time with us, for sharing your diversified perspectives on this very important aspect of empowerment of girl child or girl children in general. A measure of any society is how it treats its women and girls. And when we empower girls who grow up to be confident women, whole society thrives. So on this occasion of International Day of Girl Child, I hope that we invest in nurturing our girl children, as this will bring stability in our society and lead to the positive transformation of our communities, countries, and the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.